On behalf of the Hampshire Township Historical Society, I'd like to welcome all of you here. It's a great crowd. It's really a fascinating topic tonight. We have 5 wonderful presenters and interesting historical stories of 5 farms in our area. And I also welcome all of you in TV land, social media land, and we're glad you're joining us too from around the country. It's really our pleasure to provide these programs. As many of you know, we record the programs, and Dennis Houghton, our filmmaker, edits them and polishes them, and they're preserved. In addition, we interview seniors and record those stories and preserve them. We have interviewed 30 seniors to date. Some have gone to heaven, but we keep busy and are focused on documenting as much as we can in this window of time the stories of Hampshire. We have other projects going. One is History in Your Attic, in which we would like to ask you to look in your attic, your basement, your garage, and if there's any special memorabilia of Hampshire history, please bring it to us. This is a flyer which gives a detail. You can bring it downtown to Les Peterson's office between 10 and 2, 5 days a week. We'll ask you to fill out some information about the items you bring in, but we want to really begin serious collecting of the memorabilia of Hampshire. Don't let your kids throw it out. So beat them to it and bring it our way, and we will be happy to receive it. In addition, we are moving towards a lot more activities and notices that frankly are easiest for us if you give us your email. We do mailings of those that need flyers for these programs, but please give us your email if you have one. This table to our right is your opportunity to get your email recorded, get the flyer of History in the Attic. In addition, you can buy chocolate. We're selling chocolate bars. It's a fundraiser with Fannie Mae, 2 bars for $5. Is that right?
Yep.
Bill? And this helps support our activities and the extensive program. And we're adding on a great celebration of old-fashioned days in June, the first weekend of June. So mark your calendars. Do you remember old-fashioned days? We are going to be hopping in this town all weekend. So put that on your calendar. Because we're recording, I just ask your patience as we transition from speaker to speaker. But first, I would like to present Jane Allen Tegman, who many of you know, of course, and her family roots are deep in the Township of Hampshire. And Jane will tell us about her farm history.
Thank you so much, Bonnie. Yes, good evening, and thank you for all attending. And I didn't think I would be too nervous, but when I see the room full, it's like, oh boy, here we go. But my family settled in 1835, and my father had this made years and years ago, and he has it above the front garage, front door. And it said the homesteaded in 1835 by Zenas and Lucretia Allen, first house in Hampshire Township. He was very proud of that. Deerfield Precinct. I didn't quite understand all of that, but I'm sure Mike Gustafson, if I had a question, he could let me know. He's pretty sharp on all that. So I'm 6th generation out at the Allen's Corner. And my oldest daughter, Christy, and her husband is here. She's 7th generation. And our grandchildren are 8th generation. Zenas and Lucretia Allen came from the state of Vermont in 1835. And the first log cabin was built on top of the hill across from the Allen's front garage. And still to this day, there's pieces of pottery in the field. I checked years ago and found quite a bit of it, but now since the farm has been sold and another gentleman has taken the business there, I think that area is covered up. There was a fire in the second house in the late 1930s, and all the other treasures from Vermont were burned up. So we have the anvil, the original anvil that came from the state of Vermont. And any of you that knew my dad, he liked anything big, red, and heavy. So he took this anvil and he placed it on a homemade, anything to construct with iron. My father loved it. And he put this anvil on a big pedestal and painted it red. And so we still have it at the garage. And he had a few others too. So I told Ted he's got to help me mark which one was the original anvil. So my children will know the history on that. And most of the ancestors on the Allen farm, it was a 200-acre farm, and most of them, they were farmers. They didn't really do a whole lot of other, and the farm ran 1 mile lengthwise towards Hampshire. I think it ends just before you get to W.R. Meadows Field. So that was really a long way. It was a farm long and lengthwise, and I think we were the only property in the Hampshire area that had that much property next to the tracks and next to Hampshire. My dad told me years ago that the Coon Creek started south of the tracks on the Allen property, which then later years was sold to Norland Dalby property now, and it was spring fed. And I asked him, I said, are you sure it just bubbles up out of the ground and flows? And he goes, yeah. He said, to my understanding, that's where Coon Creek starts. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The slough on the west side of the property, the men that rented that property collected government money not to farm it. Well, I'm not a farm girl, so I don't understand why the government paid the men not to farm that property. We could ride our ponies in it, and our ponies their feet would sink way in. It truly was slough. But the renter, at least he got a little extra money out of it, but I never understood why that all took place. And of course, my father, he had stories, many stories, and I never wrote them down, and I never recorded them, and I feel really bad that I did not, because he was a walking encyclopedia. And he knows I like animals, so one day he came to me and he said, Janie, do you know that there's kangaroo mice down on that property just west of where the slough is? And I said, no, I've never even heard of a kangaroo mouse. And he said, well, they have a pouch and they hop around like a little tiny kangaroo. So I never saw it, but he swears he saw the kangaroo mice down there. And years ago, the hobos used to ride the train and hop off, because my grandma, Christine, who was married to Herman, my grandpa, she ran the restaurant years ago. And I guess word got around that if you wanted to ride the train out and hop off, if you went to the restaurant, my grandma would feed you free. So that was all quite interesting to me also. And then, of course, most of us, I don't see any really young people here, most of us years ago, it was the talk of the community when the Brock chocolate heiress, she was said to be buried in the woods, the Allen Woods, south of the tracks. And never to be found. They brought machinery and they dug, and oh boy, gave my dad lots to talk about. We just looked and waited to hear news, but they never found her, and I don't know why they came out to that area to look for her. In 1957, the first threshing bee was held at the Allen farm. And I remember it like yesterday. I was 5 years old, and my Uncle Bill Allen, who was my Grandpa Herman's brother, he lived over on off of 72 that where the Dalbys now own that property. And he had a donkey named Buttermilk. And he got Buttermilk hooked up to a little wagon. And he told my mom and dad that he would take me down to the threshing bee. So boy, I remember it like yesterday. I remember the smells from the wheat being threshed and seeing all the men running around and working, and they were enjoying themselves. And I have a film somewhere. I don't know exactly where it is now, but years ago I saw it. And in this film, Les Peterson is in this film. And I'm thinking by the looks of it, he was 14, 15, 16. He was very recognizable. And I'm like, wow, that was pretty cool. And I know Mylan Duhai has asked me to, find that movie, but I never did. It's around somewhere, but maybe my children will find it one day. And my neighbor girls and I, we were very blessed. We rode our bikes on the farm. We rode our ponies on the farm. And my dad, he was very nice, even though he was a workaholic and I never saw him much. He got an old Dodge DeSoto fixed up and ready for us kids to ride to the creek and back. And oh my goodness, there was like 10 of us. We would pile in that car and we would go, sometimes in the summertime, we'd put 30, 40 miles back and forth, back and forth. We thought we were just the bomb. And we had a junkyard dog that stayed up in the front garage. His name was Bozo. And Bozo had to hop in with us all the time when we were going on these little rides. And, when it was hot out and he was stinky and drooling, it's like, goodness, can't that dog just stay at the garage? There is a catalpa grove group of trees, and you can see them from Allen Road when you're going east on Allen Road. If you look to the right, now this is what my dad told me. I don't know if it's true or not, but he said years ago the farmers, the Allen men, planted those catalpa trees because they grew fast, and if they ever needed fence posts, they could make fence posts quickly from those trees. Well, I'm 73 years old, and I have never seen ever a fence post made from that catalpa grove. So I don't know if Father was pulling my leg, or sometimes, he liked to really build his stories up. But that catalpa grove is still there. And actually, I don't think it's a real, it's not a hardy tree. I mean, you see them all over the country, and they bloom in the spring, and they're pretty, but then they got those big, long seedling things that can really come in your yard and make a mess. But yeah, the good old catalpa grove was there. And of course, Harry DeFreitas used to rent that property from my Grandpa Herman. And Harry took care of our ponies, and he'd always put our ponies in that catalpa grove. And them darn ponies, they knew that when we were coming to catch them to ride them, they'd run all the way down to the end. So you'd have to go through a real act to catch them so you could ride them. And there was a double milking cow barn built for Lizzie Allen and her twin sister Lena. And was that Gustafson? Yeah, Lena Gustafson. And Lena and her husband, they lived in the 2-story house that used to be on Briar Hill. Ted and I just tore one of those houses down a few years ago. And these women wanted their cows, they wanted their milk cows, but they didn't want to have the dairy cows together. So Lizzie had their edge of the barn, and Lena had the other side. And I guess it worked for them. So then one day my dad said, well, Janie, um, this barn kind of was built a little unique. And he said, there is another barn in the community that's similar to this barn. And it's the Thames barn that was on Big Timber Road before they tore it all down to put up that new subdivision. And so when I would drive by, I'd always go a little slower and look. And it did look a lot like, our barn at Allen Farm. And let's see here. Oh, well, this maybe, if you're an animal lover, which I was, my dad and my Uncle Gene, they would climb to the top of the silo on the Allen farm and they'd drop the cats off with parachutes and hope and pray that they landed safely. Now, my dad told me most of the time they landed on their feet. And I said, well, didn't you get in trouble? And he said, yeah, Grandma, Lizzie, she didn't like it at all. So she said, we got in trouble a lot. And Grandpa Herman Allen, he had a pet crow. And I know when I talked here a year ago, I mentioned this story. And he really loved his pet crow. And it flew to his bedroom window all the time. Well, I think his mother got tired of it, the messes or whatever. So one day when he went to school and he came home, the crow was gone. And I'm sure that they got rid of that crow. And he also raised pet skunks. And I said, well, Grandpa, how in the world did you do that? No, he said he de-skunked them. Now, I don't know how he did that because you would think they would have had to have some kind of medication to numb them, I guess. I don't know. But he had lots of them. And he said a few of the people would want a skunk for a pet. So I always thought that was kind of fun. And I was fortunate enough and very lucky to have a pony and a horse on the Allen farm. My pony came from Belvedere at the auction barn. I think I was in 6th grade. And Harry DeFreitas housed them at the farm because he was running the farm. And Grandpa Herman, he bought the ponies, but Harry had to feed them. So we were blessed, us neighbor kids. We had it made. We got to ride our bikes. We got to ride our ponies. We had an old junk car to drive around. So that Allen farm really brought us a lot of fun memories. And Minnie and John and Bill and Ernie, Dave and Herman, they were Harvey and Elizabeth's children. So Minnie, she was the grandma to Phyllis Treadwell that lived on Main Street in Hampshire. And I always heard she was a little feisty. And I can't imagine where that would come from because, they were always known to be pretty smooth going. And of course, that's a little joke. And and then Uncle John, he was Diane Herman's grandpa and Sandy Siegman's grandpa and their brother Mike Bailey's grandpa. And I don't remember him. He passed in 58 and I was 5. He was a machinist, so he didn't like farming. And Bill, he lived over off of 72 where the Dalbys own that property now. And he worked for McGraw Edison there off of 25 over there by rural Dundee. And then Ernie, he was a farmer on Allen Road. And Dave, he was a farmer right there on 20 across from Allen's Corner. And then, of course, Grandpa Herman, he was raised on the farm, but he didn't want any part of all that. He wanted to go next door and build his fix-it shop. And then, of course, he got Allen's garage going. So thanks to Grandpa Herman, that's why we're still there. And Father always told me that there were Indians at one time on our property. And my dad had a friend out at Salmon, Idaho, and he would come and visit. And I think the town in Salmon was maybe 1,200, 1,500, and he was the sheriff at Salmon, Idaho. So when he'd come, he asked my dad, "Can I go walk the farm?" And my dad said, "Sure." And he would come back with a bucket full of arrowheads. Now I rode my pony, I drove cars. I never saw an arrowhead, but you had to look at special spots for those arrowheads. And so my dad always said, "Yeah." And Mike, you would know what division of the Indians? What did you know the name of their? There you go, Shabana. Yeah, and my dad also told me that poor Milan Duhai, he's not here to defend himself, but my father told me that behind Milan's house there's a there was an Indian mound. Now I don't know how he knew that either, but every time I drive by Milan's house and I see that little rise behind their barns and that, I'm like, I wonder if that's really all very true about that Indian mound that my dad told me about. I've always loved animals and birds and saw many animals on the Allen farm for years. I've seen deer and coyotes and fox, raccoons, possum, woodchucks, beaver, rabbits, hawks, pheasants, ducks, and a mama quail and her babies. I think she really stole my heart because this cute little quail running around with these little teeny babies. It was really amazing if you could take the time and just sit and watch nature. It was a beautiful sight. So we sold the Allen farm in 2021 to the Berglund family to clear up my dad's estate. And we, the Allen family, was blessed to enjoy the farm for many years. And it was truly a blessing. I really miss not owning it, but I guess we never did own it to begin with. It was the good Lord's property, and we were privileged to be able to enjoy ourselves on that land, and I thank the good Lord for that. So those are a few of my ideas on the Allen farm that I got to share with you, and thank you, and have a good evening.
It's a history that goes way back, huh? Isn't that amazing? The first home in the township. I remember my Aunt Dolores Anderson, which many of you probably remember, got to be 103 and a half. And she would tell about, bringing in milk from the cows for use in the home. And she had a favorite cow. And she could tell whether or not the milk was from that favorite cow of hers. And she would correct her sons or her husband if they brought milk into the house from a different cow. And I thought that was just really fascinating that she could discern that. Well, so much for that story. But this is Tim Bean, and many of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Bean Farm out on Big Timber Road. And we're most anxious, Tim, to hear about your family.
Thank you, and thank you guys for being here. The Bean family need more anecdotes. That's a hard act to follow. Maybe Tom can remind us of a joke about selling a mule to a Methodist, because our family was a lot quieter than the Allens. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the ownership of the farm over the last 172 years, starting with my grandpa's grandpa, that's J.W. Bean, in 1854. He bought a 180-acre farm on Big Timber Road. And soon after he moved there, he built this house, and that's the house I live in today with some modifications. When J.W. moved here in 1854, he brought his young son, Byron, and his wife. His father-in-law, Moses Fifield, was also in Hampshire. Moses was a veteran of the War of 1812. The sons of J.W., it's Jezreel Wellington Bean, were Byron, who was a carpenter. He built the house my brother lives in. Cyrus and Ernest, who were farmers and moved away. George H. Bean stayed with his father to help in the farm in Hampshire. They had a daughter, Lizzie, who married a lawyer in Elgin. J.W. Bean was still able to travel back to New Hampshire from Hampshire to visit his family, and he did die in Hampshire, Illinois in 1909 at age 87. There's a picture of J.W. and three of his grandchildren that would later take over the farm. When he was in charge, he planted apples, walnuts. He built the granary first, then the house. Both those buildings are in the Greek Revival architectural style, which is very common in New England. The original barn that J.W. built is smaller than the one that's there today, but milk from the dairy was their main income. J.W. did visit neighbors and family a bunch. We have diaries of most of our ancestors, and they had an active social life, and they were also very active in the church. The son, George H. Bean, operated the farm from 1890 to 1916, although he did work with his father and his sons when they were in charge. He built the barn that still stands today in 1896. George H.'s farm also was very dependent on dairy or milk. They had 3 to 4 trips by wagon to town to sell the milk at the depot. And most of the day-to-day work was manual. There were not a lot of mechanization back in that day. The horses and animals were a big part of everyday life before 1915. George's family included his wife, Carolyn Madrer. The Madrers were a family that lived just across the field. Together they had 5 children, the 3 boys and 2 daughters. My great aunt Amy, who postponed a career in teaching to take care of her mother, and my great aunt Marjorie, who died 2 months before her 16th birthday of the Spanish flu in 1918. Those 3 brothers, though, grew up to take over the farm in 1916. They ran it for 10 years. That's Earl, my grandfather, Reuben, and Richard. They rented the farm from their dad and bought additional land as it became available and added some mechanization to the farm. During their 10 years of business together, this astounds me that they kept all the records for their 10-year business partnership in this one journal. And they only used 283 pages. They could have farmed 9 more years with the same book. One of the first entries was the rent to their father for the farm, 200 acres at that time, for $1,600 for the year. I wondered about the transition and how George H. handed the farm over to his sons. This explains it a little bit. He got a rent check, and he also got paid $100 a month for labor to help out. They kept track of every single nickel that they spent and earned. This is 1916 receipts, which shows December milk of 318 cans at $1.70. Now, Al and I were doing a little bit of math, and it turns out to be about $2.47 per hundredweight in 1916. That would be $73 per hundredweight today. I don't think there are any dairy farmers here today because it's not a very profitable business anymore. The $15 per hundredweight is a common sale price. But at that time it was profitable, so they invested in their herd Here's an entry in 1916 of buying from the neighbor Cyrus Getzelman a registered Holstein bull calf for $50. I did a little research, and it seems like that $1,500 in 2026 dollars is about what you'd pay for that same calf, depending on the weight and quality. By 1920, they had found and purchased another farm on Route 20. They called it the Gens Farm, and they rented that in 1920 to Ernest Allen for $66.37 per month for an 80-acre farm. Expenses in 1925 are kind of interesting. They include Peterson Brothers, Ray Maynard, Kirkhoff Brothers, Blazier and Kimball, the store, and a donation to the Tornado Relief Fund of 1925, and the Pigeon Woods Threshing Company. That threshing company was a co-op of local farmers that bought an expensive piece of equipment that not one individual could afford. Here's a picture of it at our farm. They paid by the hour to the co-op, and they had a share in the co-op. The Pigeon Woods area is loosely defined as north of Hampshire and south of where I-90 is today. Their 10-year partnership was pretty lucrative. They started with a capitalization of $7,800 and ended with about $45,000. In 2026 dollars, that's about 800,000 bucks. So they did pretty good. But they did split their partnership up in 1927 when my grandpa got married. Earl Bean got married in 1926, but before that he attended some classes at U of I. He married my grandmother, Margaret Petrie, who was a former World War I nurse. She was Scottish, and she was a vegetarian. And she moved to Hampshire. It must have been a transition for her. Grandpa did eventually retire, but after he retired, he spent every day he was able at the farm. My grandpa and grandmother had 3 children. My Aunt Peggy, who married Jack Gross, they moved just down the road to where the high school is now. My dad, George, and my Aunt Jeanette, who married Keith Vincent, they moved to Battle Creek, Michigan. Earl farmed 200 acres in 1935. He employed some of the practices he learned at school: crop rotation, cover crops that got plowed under, soil testing, herd development, and record keeping. But this picture drives home the solid fact of farming is somebody's got to milk the cows every day. His herd development did pay off. I found this certificate that shows his average butter fat content of 355 pounds in 1945, where the national average on that year was 188 pounds. So we did pretty good there, but the national average today is 1,100 pounds. That's a picture of my grandpa in front of our horse barn, and grandma and grandpa in a town, I'm not sure where they went, but it looks a little larger than Hampshire. When they retired, my dad took over the farm in 1953. By that time, the dairy would need updating, more investment. The milk prices were a little lower. The first thing Dad did was sell the dairy cows. He traded cattle for a time, but he soon focused on grain. Many farmers in the area did. Corn and soybeans were his main income. He did buy some equipment such as a harvestor silo, a grain leg, and dryer bins to make his operation more efficient. The tractor pictured was a big deal back then. Today they use that as a utility tractor. My mom and dad were married in 52. They raised 4 kids, David, Susan, Jonathan, and myself. They both had jobs off the farm to make ends meet or to pursue professional goals, but they also had, there was work off the farm to do too. That's a picture of the farm in 1955. It looks a lot like it would have looked in 1920, with a few changes since then. Dad's record keeping looked a lot like his dad's, although the farm was bigger by then. In 1973, Dad's farm was 684 acres, which was a big deal at the time, too small by today's standards. Corn and soybeans were the main crops, but he did have hay. We always had a few steers or something to feed. This motto worked for almost 40 years. When I look at this map, though, I see all the fields that my cousins and I would drive a tractor to at age 10 on the road with a wagon full of other kids to hoe beans or throw rocks on the wagon, bring the rocks home, maybe throw a couple rocks at a sign on the way home. But all these farms, we walked up and down all these fields every summer. The model, that farming model worked for a long time, but then grain prices remained the same for many years, and inputs such as fuel and insurance and labor started creeping up and made it a little less profitable, where by 1993, Dad had to make a decision, and his decision was to sell the equipment and refocus on a career in real estate at age 64, and he did pretty good by that. My business is there now. It's Beans Farm. We sell landscape material such as mulch and firewood. The business is my attempt to keep the buildings in good repair, and for me personally, selfishly, to live on the farm and to be able to go to work there every day. I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for all the years I was able to live on this farm, and I'm also thankful for you to listen to this story. Thank you very much.
Well, now we have a very special surprise. Unlike any other you've seen in our programs before.
Hello, everyone. Heidi. Great turnout, my gosh. Wonderful. I'm the halftime show. I'm going to present the halftime show, I should say. Before I start, I want to make sure everyone is aware of the extensive efforts that one of our residents has put into organizing Old Fashioned Days, and that would be Susan Getzelman. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Susan has been planning and organizing the Old Fashioned Days celebration that is June 5th, 6th, and 7th. It's the first weekend of June. And I need to give credit to Gay LaFell for her original idea 3 years ago about, do you remember the reunions, and wouldn't it be wonderful to revive them? And this will be now our 3rd year that we're doing this. So it's open to the public, there's no charge, and we are having music for 3 consecutive days and ending on Sunday with water fights, which is something that used to go on in Hampshire years ago. I don't know how long it's been since we've had them, but took a little bit of work and convincing, but we're going to have water fights on Sunday of that weekend. So thank you, Susan, for your efforts. She's put in a ton of work. Okay, the halftime show. I'd like to introduce our youngest member of the Historical Society. This is Miles Johnson, everyone. Miles didn't move to Hampshire. He was actually born in Hampshire, and apparently his parents purchased the home that he lives in the same day he was born. The house is up on Jefferson Street, next to
Patrick Herman.
Next door to Patrick Herman. So Miles caught my attention because he's interested in all things old and all things Hampshire, and you don't typically see that from someone of this age. So I talked to him and his mother, and we talked about him coming to present tonight to share with you his collection of items that he has acquired over quite a length of time. So with that, Miles, I'll turn it over to you if you'd like to share with everyone what you brought tonight.
So I have brought this calendar from a general store in Hampshire from 1955. And Bill has given it to me. And do you remember the name of the...
Yeah.
So I traded a lighter for this Randy Ross.
For those of you that don't know, that's the Centennial Guide from 1976. It outlines the program and a lot of Hampshire history. It's a very well-written publication. This publication also will be available again, thanks to the efforts of Jeannie Meyer and the committee on the 150th. They're going to republish this publication. So if you don't have a copy, it will be available online through Amazon. You definitely have to get a copy of it. The history in it is amazing.
I found this in the trash. It's a thermometer from Henning Bros service.
Can you show that to the middle, to the camera?
Yeah, if you want to walk up a little closer and hold it up, Miles.
Sure.
What business was it? You said Henning Brothers,
Henning
correct?
Brothers service.
They operated a, I think, more or less milk equipment, chemical and supply company, the Henning Brothers, on,
They had a gas station at the south end of town, that was Bill and Ed.
was it? Okay. Where'd you get that? Where you said you
I
found
found this in the trash actually on Grove Street when they're cleaning out a house.
it? Not afraid to dumpster dive.
No.
Good man.
So all of these are pens from Gustafson Oils from Hampshire that Randy Ross has given me. I also have a pencil from Black Hawk Bob's Toggery in Hampshire.
Bill, do you know anything about that? Black Hawk Bob's Toggery? When it was in,
Only one that had the tiger was Bob Kellman. Back in the 50s, he left here in about 59 or 60.
okay.
And the rest of these are pens from Gustafson Oils from over the years.
What'd you pay for those?
Nothing.
The best price.
Yes.
And what else do you have in there, young man?
That's it. And
That's
I
it.
found this in the garbage on State Street. He knows the name.
This, he read me the name. It's Franz Paffinger's wife. Esther, thank you. This apparently when they cleaned out Phyllis's house, this was out in the curb, and he had the wherewithal and means to say, "Oh, I could put that to use." So he uses that to store his goods.
Yes.
So thank you, Miles. I have one point to make, and I thought of it before, and I guess it's this. It's a plug for membership. If you haven't joined, my point is it's never too early or too late to join the Historical Society. We have applications over there. Would love to have you folks join us if you haven't, and renew your memberships when they come up. Love to have you. Great turnout, folks. Thank you so much. And thank you, Miles.
And don't be afraid to do a little dumpster diving or really check out your basements, attics, and garages. Our next presenter is Tom Getzelman, and probably everybody in this room knows at least one or two Getzelmans in the community. Treasures to be had, and there's a very special exhibit here of their family tree. And we're very delighted, Tom, for you to present now.
Well, first of all, thanks to my cousin Gail Getzelman Stover and her husband Lloyd Stover for collaborating with me, and my uncle Leroy, who could answer any questions and keep us honest. Andreas Getzelman was born in Bavaria, Germany in 1775. He and his wife never moved to the United States, but it was Andreas's son, Melchior, who was born in 1801, that moved with his wife and 7 children to the United States in 1848. When Melchior Getzelman family arrived in New York, they took a train from New York to Chicago, and from there, records show the family settled in the Hampshire Burlington area in 1848. Michael Johann, that's who this guy is, was my great-great-grandfather and had 9 children. John, my great-grandfather, was his 5th child, and he was born in 1865. MJ's 9 children in birth order were William, Henry, Elizabeth, Susanna, Cyrus, or Cy, who was Buzzy Getzelman's grandfather, John, who was my great-grandfather, Julius, Anna, Andrew, and Emma. John, my great-grandfather, married Emma Berner on February 12, 1883. Here is their marriage license. They had 6 children, and they settled on a farm near the junction of Big Timber Road and Harmony Road, north of town, previously owned by his father, M.J. Getzelman. But this is not the Century Farm I'm speaking about tonight. The farm previously owned by MJ is north of the village of Hampshire. And you can see, I'll show you where this is, way up there, the bean farm was right there. It was on Big Timber. That's Harmony. That is the Melms over there. And this is Kelly Road here. But MC Getzelman, to make it more complicated, was also a relative of mine, but he was M.J. Getzelman's brother. So his name was Malachi Christian. And he also owned land near Hampshire. John and Emma settled on the farm he inherited from his father, M.J., on the north side of Big Timber Road near Harmony. There isn't much left of the old farm except for these 2 old tin buildings, and this was right next to the bean farm. John and Emma and their 6 children grew up on that farm on Big Timber Road. Their oldest child was my grandfather, Harry. John and Emma's other children were in birth order Mabel, Roman, Laura, Fremont, and Bernice. Eventually, great-grandpa John Getzelman also purchased 200 acres of land south of Hampshire. Here's the plat of survey to the south that was owned either by great-grandpa John or Grandpa Harry. And again, let's see, that's Route 72 right there. This is Getzelman Road now. There used to be a kink in it before, right in front of the chicken dip, but they straightened it out now. But my grandpa started here. John Getzelman owned this here. Grandpa also bought the corner there. This is Lenshaw Road. Okay. So then the 200-acre purchase happened in 1911. That's why my sister Ann has an Illinois Century Farm sign in front of her farm on Getzelman Road. About 15 years ago, my sister Ann was at the state fair with my cousins, and we have pictures of that. And they saw the paperwork and showed that the same family had owned the same land for over 100 years and making it known as a Century Farm, so they signed up for it. This sign sits on her 15 acres that has been Getzelman land for over a century. With time, my grandpa Harry, as I said, also purchased adjoining land nearby to the original 200 acres that great-grandpa John had purchased. Included into this land was an additional 2 40-acre parcel, one near the corner of French Road, which I showed you where it was, and the other was near the old FS plant. And the FS plant is way up there. The included in the land purchased by my grandfather Harry was the North Farm, as my grandparents called it, the farm that sits just south of the Shirewood Farm subdivision, the one with the really long lane back to the house and barn. And that's this one right here. And this is the house that I came home from in the hospital when I was born in 1952. So that was the first farm I grew up on. There's an interesting story of why my kids attended Burlington Central schools, even though we were living within Hampshire Township. This also applies to why kids living in the Shirewood Farms subdivision just off French Road had to attend Burlington schools. Seems that in 1947, the people of Hampshire, Burlington, Plato Center, Udina, and Lily Lake wanted to consolidate and build a high school. I've been told that the Hampshire people insisted that the new high school should be built in town in Hampshire. The other towns wanted the high school to be built out in the country and wanted it to be centrally located between all of the communities, hence the name Central High School. But Hampshire refused, so Hampshire eventually joined with Dundee, since Dundee assured the people of Hampshire that they could have their high school in Hampshire. So Burlington, Plato Center, Lily Lake, and Udina went together and built Central High School out on top of Tower Hill, more centrally located. When my grandpa Harry heard the news that Hampshire was going in with Dundee, he was worried about the taxes that would eventually come down on his property because Meadowdale shopping center was just being built. So the next day, my grandpa Harry petitioned to have his land included in the Central School District 301, even though his land was in Hampshire Township. He could petition out of District 300 at that time because there was no pending bond referendum. But to this day, I shake my head in disbelief when I see the Hampshire and Burlington school buses turn into the same Shirewood Farms subdivision, because the last little bit up at the very top, the houses up there are still in District 300 and not in 301. So if you're ever wondering why the hell are there two separate school buses picking up kids in the same division, now you know the answer. And so whenever one of my kids forgot their saxophone or French horn or trumpet, I would have to drive what seemed like a 10-mile round trip to Central High School rather than the less than 1-mile trip to Hampshire High School, because that's when Hampshire High School is still in town. The 6 children of John and Emma Getzelman eventually all went their own ways. My grandparents, Harry and Edna, ended up on the farm south of Hampshire on Lenshaw. But there's an interesting story in how my grandpa and grandma met. When great-grandpa John purchased the 200-acre farm south of town, he was using the farm as an investment and rented the farm to Arthur Helson from Sycamore, who would later become my great-grandfather. His oldest daughter, Edna, my grandmother, met my grandfather, Harry, while Arthur Helson and his wife and 2 daughters lived on the farm on Lenshaw Road. Harry began to court Edna, and eventually they were married 102 years ago in 1924. And Grandpa and Grandma moved onto the farm that great-grandpa John had purchased in 1911. My father, Arthur, was the oldest sibling in his family and was born in 1925 in this farmhouse on Lenshaw Road. I didn't know the old farmhouse had porches earlier on until I saw this old photo. Harry and Edna raised 7 children on the Century Farm that sits on Lenshaw Road. At our most recent Getzelman reunion in 2022, held at Uncle Leroy's farm, the Century Farm and the farm where my grandmother met my grandfather, the reunion had direct descendants of Harry and Edna from all over the country. This is them, very colorful. And here's a photo of just Harry and Edna's grandchildren in birth order on the Century Farm. By the way, I remember getting everyone lined up properly for this photo was like herding cats. 4 grandchildren couldn't make it to the reunion that day. Leroy still lives on the farm on Lenshaw Road and has 3 girls, hence the name Trigal Farm on the sign out by the road. In closing, I know you would all expect some juicy information about the Getzelmans, so I thought I would part with this. By the way, you can find just about anything on the internet nowadays. It seems that not all of us Getzelmans were on the up and up, and in the late 1890s, my great uncle was fined $10 for violating the game laws of Kane County. He evidently had shot a prairie chicken, and there was a warrant out for his arrest. He was out on a trip out east, but his brother, I guess that would be my great-grandfather John, found out about the warrant and decided to plead guilty for him and pay the fine. By the way, $10 was a lot of money in those days. And so, not all of us Getzelmans, well, I should jump ahead here. And so, from our humble beginnings of Andreas Getzelman in 1775 to eventually the Getzelman tribe in Hampshire, Illinois, we've had a wonderful and interesting history over the centuries. Be sure to look at some of the Getzelman memorabilia after the presentation. That's it. Thank you.
So we are back to hear about the Manser farm, and Marion Manser is presenting, and she'll be introducing her brother and sister.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marion, the oldest, and then my sister Carol, who came from Cincinnati for tonight, and her son came along, and my grandson came along, and John's granddaughter came along, or daughter with and wife, with their two boys, his grandsons. So happy to have them all join us too. So we're newbies. My grandparents showed up here in 1913. So none of this 1800 stuff. We're newbies to Hampshire Township, and they bought the farm in 1913 from William and Lizzie Runge, who were Deanne Thames, Darlene Tegmeyer's grandparents. And I think I saw Bill here. Is Deanne back there too?
Yeah.
Okay. And they had bought the farm from Edwin and Helen Maynard and William Kuhn and Samuel Kuhn in 1910. And they were the ones, William Runge was the one that built the barn in 1910. And Deanne had this saved, which told about a barn dance held in the barn the October 1st. Everyone is cordially invited to attend a dance in William Runge's large new barn, 80 by 40 feet, 1 mile north of the Walker Schoolhouse, on Saturday evening, October 1st, 1910. Music by the Holtgreens Orchestra. Dance tickets, 50 cents. Well, I think that's how they paid for the barn. And then they had floor managers, Charles Roach, Hugh Walker, and George Shatters. I guess they were like the bouncers of the day. So this was really a treasure to find that Deanne found. So my grandparents came from Hinckley, and they were farming in Hinckley, had a herd of dairy cows. I don't know how many, do you?
No,
Probably not much, but they had to move the dairy cows to Hampshire. So they had to make arrangements along the way to stop at different farms to milk these cows. And we were curious how long it took. And just through AI, figured it was at least 2 to 3 days to walk them from Hinckley to Hampshire and making their stops along the way to milk. Another interesting thing was the farmhouse that's still there was moved from Ellen Road at some point. And I think it was near where the Meadows driveway is now. I think it was located in that area. Is that kind of what? Yeah. And it was moved to the location. And I don't know if the Rungies did this or if it was there before the Rungies got there. It was there by 1913 when my grandparents moved there. And this is a picture of the farm when it was a fully functional farm. And I think it was in the late 60s. And I'm going by that because the road is paved. And it was a gravel road yet when I graduated from high school in 1965. So I think it was shortly after that that they actually paved the road. So can we move on? These are my grandparents, Mabel and John Manser. And here's a picture of John Manser all dressed up. And what is interesting about this picture is the house was stucco. And I don't know at what point they covered it up with asbestos shingles, which now we're not very pleased with, but that was a trend at one point, and they really thought they were accomplishing something with that. Let's see, where are we? Move on to the next one. Okay, this is after my folks got married. And maybe an interesting story before they got married. When my dad was probably 20, he started kind of feeling achy and sore and just kept working on the farm. And finally they took him to the doctor and they diagnosed him with polio. And they said the only thing that kept him from not really being a cripple is the farm work, climbing up the silo, climbing in the hayloft. And they just sent him home and said, keep doing it. So his version of physical therapy back in the day. And he did end up with a little limp, but that was it. So this is right after my folks got married. And if you notice, it's an Oliver tractor. He always had Olivers from day one. And they look very happy and contented there on their Oliver. You want to, okay. This is just some of the changes to the house after they put the asbestos shingles on. And the porch that's there on the side of the house was an open porch, and I think it had screens, and then that got closed in. And then the front porch, they went back to a big full front porch. So they were always tweaking things. Okay. This is about thrashing. And this picture, well, we're not sure if the big picture was the same time. That's the only one on there. But anyway, I think they were called the Coon Creek Thrashing Company, and I think Melanie's dad and grandpa were very involved in it. And this was a thrashing machine, and you could see the steam engine there. And there was a corn crib and there was a garage, and there was an empty space between that was just the right size to store the steam engine. So they put some cement down, put a roof slanted over to connect those two buildings, and that's where the steam engine was stored. Because to buy all this equipment, you had to join with your neighbors and form a company. And so that's what it looked like when they set it all up. Now, this supposedly is people that helped with the thrashing. And in the picture, I'm not sure who the one name is, but did I write down who these people are? I don't know. Did I put it in here? Oh, yes. By the chimney is my cousin Joyce Thames, and she's holding me. And this was in 1948. And then we couldn't read what the one name was. And my dad is standing by the chimney, Oakley. And then Gerhard Thames was there. Happy Woodmeyer, Johnny Dewthorn,
And Leroy.
and Leroy is farther on. Leroy Woodmeyer. Louis, who I think was Louis Dumlin, is with Billy Chase. And then there was a Dale and a Bob. And we're not sure.
Renards.
Renard, that's who
Yeah.
I think. I think they were there at the time. Those were the Dale and Bob I could come up with. So this is probably after they were, had come in for dinner at noon. And this was part of being a farmer's wife back then. You had a lot of men to feed, a lot of hungry, hot, sweaty men. So go back to that other thrashing picture. And this one we were trying to figure out who the people were, and what we were wondering, who is a man standing there all dressed up in a suit with a hat on?
That I don't know.
Supervisor.
Right, the guy in charge, I don't know. And because we said if it was our grandpa and it's at his farm,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have been standing there with his suit on unless they really thought he was a boss. I don't know. But that was kind of, I don't know. Do you have a clue?
No. Junior Maynard always said that him and Walker were in charge of the water tank, and that's what you see in front of the steam engine there.
A water tank. Okay. Yeah. I'll take your word for it. Okay, so we can move along. That was me probably at age 3 on a tractor with my dad. And I was the firstborn, so they had a little more time for me to get a little attention. Okay. And then we had all kinds of animals. It was a dairy farm up until I think we figured out
About 59.
59. You don't remember too much of it because you were,
Well, my dad said that was at the point where he would have to install a bulk tank, and they'd also have to rebuild the milk house so it was attached to the barn, and it wasn't worth that investment at that
Right.
time.
and so switched to dairy cattle, hogs,
Yeah.
all kinds of chickens, and then, corn, soybeans.
We did have steers for about 5 years.
Was that all?
I think so.
Okay. Because we added the extra shed on the back for steers.
Yeah.
We had another shed we had hogs in. So that's, anyway, there's John. Is this picture up of him?
Both of them.
Oh, okay. John with his pigs at the fair, because that's what we had that he could take. You got a pig story?
And that was old-fashioned days at the park.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I got a trophy I'm holding.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was that old fashioned,
That was,
but that was a happening event there for a long time.
that was cool in the park under the trees.
Mhm. And this is Carol loved chickens. And this is Carol with her pet rooster that I didn't like. And you want to tell what happened to your rooster?
She hated chickens, and my pet rooster took after her, running across the yard barefoot over all the gravel stones. And that was the end of my pet rooster by the next day.
Yeah, kind of a sad,
Didn't last long.
sad story. And then as kids, we each had a sheep one winter, and you had ducks every year, and you had rabbits, and so it was just, all kinds of fun animals. And you can go on. This event happened in, it's not very clear, because it's a newspaper, a copy of a newspaper. These are my parents in 1977, and the news was spread all over what was going on out at the Manser farm. The septic system, the pipes, I guess, froze up, which ran under the driveway to the house. And they didn't know what to do. And they had people come out and look, and they said, well, they're just frozen until they thaw. well, how long is this going to take? So they got the corn cobs out and started making a fire there on the driveway and just kept burning corn cobs, right?
They were told in town to put charcoal over it, like barbecue charcoal.
Mhm.
And after going through a few bags of that, they decided it was time to get the corn cobs out.
Yeah, and
And made the Hampshire Register.
right. People are coming out to see this. You know, it was, how long will these two people sit here and watch the corn cobs? And I really don't know how long it took. Do you remember how long they had to sit there?
No.
Keep a fire going. but that was one of the interesting events that happened. Okay. Mhm. Okay, and then Carol did all the research to get us the Centennial Farm status, and it was more complicated than we realized, and it involved a lot of looking things up, trying to find things, and it was in 2019, I think. Carol and I and my two grandchildren, Jack and Emmy, went down to the state fair and we were recognized with fancy breakfast and got to get presented and got to get our picture taken with the state fair queen. It was such a big deal. and then brought the sign home. And we still have the farm out there. My son lives in the farmhouse. Neighbors rent the farmland. And we're planning on hanging on to it as long as we can. And it doesn't look like it used to, but we still enjoy being out there. It's always fun to be able to go out to the country. And so, anything else anybody want to add to our story? Oh, I wanted to show this. In 1985, my father had the auction. It was time to retire. He was going to be 69 in a few months. And so we had this huge farm sale. And there's pictures over there of all the equipment he sold and the crowds at the auction, all the people. And so this was in February. Then unfortunately, his retirement was going to begin, and then he died in June that year. So his retirement was very short-lived. But, and it was extremely snowy that winter, the piles of snow everywhere. So that's when my parents took over the farm in 1942, when our grandfather, John Manser, was killed in a car accident. And all of a sudden, the farm fell on my dad. And so from 1942 on, he joked, they added a bedroom downstairs, and he joked that, he'd lived in the farm in the same house all his life. The biggest move he made was from an upstairs bedroom to a downstairs bedroom, and that was it. So that kind of summarizes our, Janine would like to add something. This is John's wife.
I think the story of your mom and where she delivered eggs was interesting. Maybe all of the moms did
Well,
that,
probably some of you got eggs delivered from my mom. She had a Friday route, and she
Delivered to the nursing home when it was the old grade school, a restaurant in town, and multiple houses on the way into town as well as in town. So it was a whole Friday afternoon.
Oh, right. Olive Seiler, the Lamans, Engels, Donna Lucille Engel, and then plus everybody that came to the house.
And actually, for years, we had people from Chicago coming out to buy fresh country eggs.
So,
Before they were
huh?
Brown eggs or white?
White, mostly white. Yeah. 50 cents a dozen. That was our last ones that she sold.
$5, I thought, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Mom, really did this at
Right.
the wrong time.
Right. I mean, she spent a lot of time with those eggs. And we always had people that coming to the farm. I mean, you'd think being out in the country would be lonely. Not at our house. There was some I said to my mom, I don't know how you get anything done. And people would come and sit for half hour and visit. But that was part of being in the neighborhood and just a farm life. So pardon?
That's a cool story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. To get that out.
If I may add a story about Tim Bean's family. One of the interviews we did was with Peggy Bean Gross, and I think she was 90-ish when we interviewed her in the last year or so, and and got her life story. And at the end of every interview with the seniors, the question I ask is, what advice would you give us young people? In your years of living and all you know and all your wisdom, what advice do you have for us young people? And you know what Peggy Bean Gross said? Don't let the ice cream melt. And I thought that was great. Don't let the ice cream melt. And now we have Melanie Howe presenting on the Maynard family.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thanks, everybody, for being here. I live on the farm at 16N731 Walker Road, and this farm has been owned by my family for 168 years. Ann and Abraham Maynard, my great-great-grandparents, came to Illinois in 1845 from Shenango County, New York, and homesteaded on the banks of Coon Creek. They built a small log cabin, and after several years of much hardship and lots of hard work, they were able to purchase the first 40 acres in 1858 for $50. They had 8 children, 6 that lived to adulthood, 5 boys and 1 girl. The 3 oldest boys moved west to Iowa, while the 3 youngest, Edwin, Etta, and Charles, remained in Hampshire. Abraham retired in the 1880s and moved to town, and Edwin, my great-grandfather, took over the farming operations. Edwin married Helen Wright in 1882, and they had 2 children, John and May, my grandmother. Edwin inherited the farm after Abraham passed in 1896. And in this photo, you can see the farmhouse where we live today. That was added in 1885. The barn was built in 1884, and notice that it sits pretty much at ground level. And the 3 people in the middle of the photo are my great-grandmother, my grandmother, and her brother, John. John married Emma Dumlin in 1910, and they began farming on Allen Road. And May, my grandmother, married Frederick Fritz Peterson in 1912. Edwin's health deteriorated, and he passed away in 1915. His son, John, was already operating his own farm on Allen Road at that time. So Fritz and May, my grandparents, moved on to the farm and had 1 son, Maynard, my dad. The photo on the left is my grandmother. She's standing in front of the barn, and you can see now that it has a foundation. My grandfather and his hired man cut off the bottom of that barn because it had rotted from sitting on the ground, and they poured that entire foundation by hand. The bottom photo is my dad feeding the chickens at about 3 years of age. The right-hand photo is my grandpa and my dad. And the top photo is Grandpa. He raised beef cattle, and that was his prize Hereford bull. My grandmother had written on the back of that photo that when they shipped that bull, it weighed 2,380 pounds. And at market, it brought 11 cents a pound. In 1924, Fritz, my grandfather, had an opportunity to go to work as a clerk in the State Bank of Hampshire. So my grandparents and dad moved into town. The farm was then rented to John and Rose Lehman, who farmed and lived there up until the 1960s. After the death of Edwin's wife, Helen, and the final settling of the estate, the home farm on Walker Road went to my grandmother, May. Maynard, my dad, married Mom, Genevieve Gray, in 1941. They had 2 children, my brother Les and me. Dad purchased the farm from my grandparents in 1958 and took over the farming operation in the 1960s. Over the years, the farm became an integral part of Dad's business, Peterson Propane Company and Hampshire Feed Mill, with the addition of propane storage, corn drying and grain storage facilities, and the anhydrous ammonia plant. Dad spent many nights at the farm drying corn in the 1960s, and one of my favorite memories is of Mom and I taking him his dinner, always homemade, never on paper plates, laid out perfectly on a tray. We would stay while he ate, then took home the dirty dishes, and Dad would go back to watching the corn dryer and always, always reading a book. The farm also was a place for gathering of family and friends in pursuit of Dad's favorite hobby, his steam engines. No one was happier than Dad when he was hosting neighbors, family, friends, and just folks passing by that loved watching the old equipment at work. And he was never short of volunteers to run those engines or pitch those bundles into the separator. And notice that water wagon, Coon Creek Thrashing Company. Wherever my brother is here, you've got to get the one repainted because we still use that, but it needs to have the lettering on it again. In 1974, I moved onto the farm, and in 1988, my husband Bill began handling the farming operations. So most of you know that guy standing in front of the John Deere tractor. That's my husband Bill. And the other 2 are my grandchildren, Jackson and Genevieve. And every year on the first day of school, they will send us a picture holding up the board with the date and their age and what grade they're going into, maybe their favorite things and what they want to be when they grow up. And so one year we sent a sign back to the kids from us. And I don't know if you can read it, but Bill simply says, first day of harvest, 10/19/22, favorite tractor, John Deere, age 70, years farming, 35. And Jackson's, he wrote down what he wants to be when he grows up. And Jackson, do you remember what you wrote? You're here tonight.
A farmer.
Yeah.
And make the John Deere tractor.
And yeah. So Dad passed away in 2011, and the farm passed to me. And if they ever quit growing houses around here instead of cornfields, maybe, just maybe, that little guy can be a 7th generation owner, a 4 times great grandson of original owners, and an Abraham Maynard.
Beautiful story, Melanie. Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Please join us if you haven't yet. We want your membership and your support. We need it. We welcome it, and we thank you for your attention and attendance here tonight. Be safe going home. Thank you.